Professor Wergeles here. We are going through setting up a production-like server. We're adding another layer of security called Fail2Ban. Now, you want to know what Fail2Ban is. It's going to be on a quiz. It may be on an exam. So Fail2Ban is a software. In fact, it's an intrusion prevention software framework. Okay, it's going to protect computer servers from brute force attacks. Well, what's a brute force attack? I can write a quick script that goes and tries to hack your login. So I can have it randomly generate PIN files. I can have it randomly generate passwords. And it just keeps trying over and over again until it gets the correct one. It may try millions and millions of combinations. And once it finds the right combination, I can log into your server. I can take control, and I can prevent you from logging into your own server. You'll see Fail2Ban is written in Python. So it's a Python script. Okay, and it's going to help you control when a brute force attacks, it's going to lock that IP address out. Okay, so if you fail more than whatever times you set, if there's too many password failures from malicious software or from malicious scripts, it's going to ban that IP address. So you can click on the website. It's just a small, it's just a small piece of software that's going to make your server a little bit more secure. Okay, you'll see Fail2Ban scans log files and bans IPs that show the malicious signs, which is too many password failures, seeking for exploits, and many others. Okay, generally Fail2Ban is used to update firewall rules to reject the IP addresses for a specified amount of time. Although any arbitrary other action, sending an email, could also be configured. Out of the box, Fail2Ban comes with filters for various services, Apache, Courier, SSH, and many others. Okay, you'll see Fail2Ban is able to reduce the rate of incorrect authentication attempts. However, it cannot eliminate the risk that weak authentication presents. Configuration services to use only two-factor or public-private key authentication mechanism is what you really want to protect services. So we're already using public-private key authentication. We're not using two-factor authentication, but we're using public-private key plus Fail2Ban, and every layer of added security that you use, the more secure your server is going to be. So let's go ahead and add Fail2Ban. There will be a lot of quiz questions here, like what is the programming language? What is Fail2Ban? How does it help? What does it do? Okay, so make sure you know those things for an exam. Now, the first thing is we need to make sure we install. So on my tutorial, you'll see it says to do a sudo apt-get update. Well, we already did that. So now I'm going to SSH into my Wergeles N POPRINT. So that's my new user. We disable root login so you can no longer log in as the root. After I log into Wergeles N, I can then switch to root, but I cannot log into root directly. So here we're going to do a sudo apt-get. I need to do sudo because I'm installing software. I'm going to do a sudo apt-get install, and I'm just going to install Fail2Ban. Okay, really easy. Type in your password. Okay, it's a really small piece of software. It installs quickly. Okay, now I have Fail2Ban. So it's successfully installed, and it's the default package for Fail2Ban. You'll see it's using Python, just like we talked about. And if I try to log in, it's going to block my IP address if I fail too many times. Now, when Fail2Ban is installed, it also is going to come with the UFW. Okay, so you want to know what UFW is. There may be a few questions on UFW. So if I type Ubuntu server UFW, okay, you're going to see what it is. It's called the uncomplicated firewall. It's just a basic default firewall configuration tool for Ubuntu. Okay, you can select which ports you want to enable. You can select which ports you want to disable. But by default, the UFW is disabled. Now I want to draw something for you because there's a difference between the firewall on the server and the firewall on the web server. So I'm going to try to draw for you. Hopefully you can see this. It's not going to be the best because I'm drawing with my finger, but essentially we have the internet. Okay, it's a big circle. This is the internet. I'm just going to put an I here. This is the internet. And through the internet, we're going to have a user. So they're going to be on a desktop or a tablet. They're going to connect to the internet. Through the internet, they're going to come over here and connect to our server. Now, Amazon has a huge warehouse of servers. So they got this big old warehouse. This is the AWS Cloud Resource Center in the central location that we picked. So I think we picked Ohio. Now they're going to have millions or hundreds of thousands of servers. Okay, they're going to be having hundreds of thousands of servers, and let's say we have this one particular server. Now, the internet connection coming into this hardware machine is the firewall we set up on the AWS console. If I go back to the desktop and go back to the console, if you remember when we set it up, we set up this security group. Okay, we set up this security group and we set up inbound rules. So if I view the inbound rules, we set up port 80, 22, and 443. Okay, remember 22 is SSH, 80 is HTTP, 443 is HTTPS. That is the firewall that I am showing you here. So I call this the outer firewall. It's coming into the server. And then you have outbound rules. Well, the outbound rules are pretty relaxed because we don't want to restrict the server, although you could restrict the outbound rules as well. So let's say user goes to professorworgley's.com. It loads. It goes to my server. The server says, okay, he's coming on port 80 or 443, so it's accepted. It's going to let it through. The server is going to load the page and return it to the user. And then the browser or my web page, professorworgley's.com, will show up on the user's device. Okay, now that's the first firewall. I call it the outer firewall. Let me clear this. I'm just going to draw the actual server itself. So that outer firewall is here. Okay, that's going to be your server, which is the hardware. And inside that server, you have a web server. So this is going to be the web server. And this is going to be our server. So we have incoming connections to the server. We have outgoing connections to the server. So input, output. We also have input, output to the web server. And we need to define those rules. So there's technically two firewalls. One's coming into the actual server itself, which we set up on the AWS account. The other is going to be on the web server. Okay, on the web server. And that's going to be our UFW, our uncomplicated firewall. So we need to open up 22 on the AWS portal. We also need to open up 22 on the uncomplicated firewall. Same with port 80 and port 443. Okay, so we need to do all three of these on both of the firewalls. In some cases, students are having problems. I just tell them to stop the UFW, see if that works. Sometimes I tell them to open up all the ports on the AWS console, see if that works. But for a production server, you want to have it locked down. So both of the firewalls are good. It adds another layer of protection. So coming back over to the server, I installed Fail2Ban, and now I'm going to use the UFW, okay, which is our uncomplicated firewall. So first things first, I could do this, UFW app list. Okay, you'll see I need to be a root, so I need to use a sudo, or I could switch over to the root, and you'll see the available applications are OpenSSH. Okay, that's going to be the output. So what I want to do is I want to allow SSH. So I'll say sudo uncomplicated firewall. Go ahead and allow OpenSSH. Okay, I actually spelled that wrong, but it still worked. Let me run that again just in case. Okay, you'll see it's using the v4 rules, the Internet v4, and also the v6 rules. But we need to enable the firewall, because if you remember back on the website, it said that UFW was disabled by default. So I'll say uncomplicated firewall, make sure you do sudo, or make sure you log in as a root, and I'm going to do enable. Not able to spell today, do enable. Command may disrupt existing SSH connections. Do you want to proceed? Go ahead and click yes. If it kicks you off, go ahead and log back in with SSH, no big deal. And then you'll see the firewall is active and is enabled on system startup. So even if the server shuts down and starts back up, it will be enabled. So now I can say sudo UFW status. Okay, you'll see it's allowing SSH from anywhere, which is good. That's the same as we did on the AWS portal. So these two should be the same. Okay, these two should be the same. And if you really want to see what ports, okay, if you really want to see what ports are opened, you can do a sudo UFW app info, and then you type the app name. So we're going to do open SSH. Let's see what happens here. So you see open SSH is a simply port 22 over a TCP connection. Okay, that's what the SSH is. Now we haven't installed a LAMP stack yet, but when we do, we'll also want to enable the ports for HTTP and HTTPS, which we're going to do here soon. Now it's really hard for me to test Fail2Ban. I could write a quick script. I could have a while loop that goes and tries to do SSH several times. Okay, I can try to do SSH several times. But at the same time, I don't want to lock my IP address out. Okay, but you can try to log in a few times. Eventually, you're going to get kicked out. Okay, Fail2Ban is going to actually kick you out. It's going to add you to the list. So then later, even if you do it right, you still won't be able to log in. Okay, now I don't really want to get kicked out, so I'm not going to hit the limit. But essentially, that's what the program would do. If I'm a hacker, I'd write a quick script, try to guess your PIN file, keep trying to log in until I get it right. Instead of allowing that to happen, Fail2Ban will catch it, block the IP. If the hacker switches to another IP and it keeps trying to block that IP, so it's just going to add another layer of protection. They have some scripts you can find online. It's a while loop. It keeps trying to log in. Fail2Ban adds you to the list, and you'll no longer be able to log in. Okay, you can test it out on your own to see if it works. But if you have Fail2Ban installed, you've enabled the firewall, you're good to go. Okay, so Fail2Ban will be enabled, and it will boot the IP if you log in unsuccessfully too many times. Okay, the other thing we could do is we can do a netstat. So I'm going to check the network just to see what ports are open, what connections are open. Okay, so you'll see here I have TCP over the local host. Remember, this is local host. You'll see I have port 22 open. Okay, right now only port 22 is open. If I disable the uncomplicated firewall, which is not too hard, you can just do UFW disable. Okay, you'll see it stopped. And now if I do a netstat, okay, you'll still see the same ports. Although we do have port 80 and 443 open on the server, right now we don't have a web server installed yet, so it's not going to show up on the netstat. But that's what we're going to do in the next video. We're going to install a LAMP stack, which is Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. We're going to look at the default landing page. We're going to create our own Hello World page, and we're going to work through the challenge. So stick with Professor Wergeles, and we'll see you in the next video.